The police finished their investigation finally and came knocking on her door 2 years later. Even though she had just gotten off work as a CNA, from my understanding, she was trained to do CPR and how to save a life. And she left him that night. She chose to leave my baby on the side of the road. After 6 years, I've cried over the thoughts that run through my head of all the unknowns. It was what happened that night. I don't know. I still don't know what happened that night. And it's been 6 years.
We are about to watch the parole hearing of a woman who hit a 14-year-old and left him to die on the side of the road. Furthermore, she got away with it for over 2 years. Let's jump in to a newsreel about this, and then we're going to watch this Iowa parole hearing. I'll unpack it with all the details, including how she got caught at the end.
9 update. Loved ones say they're praying the person who struck and killed a Maynard teen during a hit and run last week is found. 14-year-old Caden Estling died after a vehicle hit his moped. The Fayette County Sheriff's Office says Estling lost control and ended up near a ditch. The teen's aunt created a GoFundMe page for the boy's funeral expenses last night. On it, she said the family is praying the suspect, a quote, heartless coward, is found soon. Authorities first responded to that crash on Highway 150 near 118th Street Thursday night. It's about 2 miles south of Fayette. Investigators say the other vehicle drove away before deputies arrived. Anyone who may have seen something, they're asked to call the Fayette County Sheriff's Office.
So to get started, all right, before we go into the victims, I want you to tell us what happened on the day of the crime that you're here for and kind of what was going on in your life at the time.
So in my life at the time, I was just an average 24-year-old. I was going to school. I was working. I happened to be driving home from work on the night of the crime, and I was running late for my second job. So I pulled out my phone to text my boss and let them know I was going to be late. And while looking down at my phone, I struck and killed a teenager on a moped. Initially, I thought I had hit a deer, and it was 2 days later when I saw it on the news that I had realized what had happened and what I had done.
Okay. And all right, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to turn it over to our victim advocate. She's going to get us everybody online, and we've got a couple of different statements for you to listen to. Okay, so just sit back. We're going to ask the victim speak directly to the panel, not to Kelly, and just sit back and listen, Kelly. Okay. You guys at ICW, you can put yourselves on mute for this part if you wish.
She's here. April's going to talk. This one. No, April. Yep. Hi, April. We're going to promote you to panelist. If you would accept that, once you have, thank you. You can choose to leave your camera off or turn it on when you share your statement. So if you want to go ahead and unmute and choose if you want your camera on or off, and then you can start sharing your statement.
It's coming. Sorry. Okay.
Okay.
I'm April. I'm Caden's mom. And I just want to first say thank you for letting me speak today. There's no words to accurately put into perspective the pain and trauma that Kelli Jo has caused our entire family. But I'm going to do my best. Caden was a one-of-a-kind kid, and he made sure that everybody had a friend in him. He stood up to bullies and would give you the shirt off of his back if you needed it. He was in soccer. He went to martial arts. He played basketball, football. He was in track. He was in band at school. He was already putting in job applications to work that summer. He told me that he couldn't wait to be able to help me that summer because he knew how much I was struggling after losing my job and being a single mom with no support from either parent. And that was just the kind of kid he was. He was always thinking of the other person. He was never, ever selfish for anything. He loved his family more than anything in the world. His grandma and grandpa were his world. He loved his mom. Me, at that time, his 7-year-old brother was only 7 at that time. He loved us to the moon and back. His aunts and uncles, his cousins were his best friends, literally. I called them my third and fourth sons. That night that Kelli Jo Michael decided to text and drive, I not only lost Caden, but I lost those other two boys too. And their lives have been miserable ever since. I'm kind of speaking for them too. Austin, his friend Austin, took it the worst because Caden had just left his house that night. He had been at my sister's the night before, long night of gaming, and Caden was so tired that night he wanted to take a nap. And I wanted him to wake up and mow the lawn. He didn't get up. So I told him that night, you can sleep when you're dead. And those words haunt me to this day because 4 hours later, he was dead. There's no such thing as perfect, but in my eyes, he was as perfect as any 14-year-old could be. He was more than just my son. He was my best friend, and a piece of my soul that night died on the side of the road with him. Kelli Jo Michael chose to watch her phone instead of watching what was coming down the road in front of her. She hit Caden from behind and chose to leave the scene like he was just a piece of trash she tossed out of her window going down the road. She didn't stop. She didn't call 911. She didn't do anything. She kept going for 729 days of misery and torture for our family. The police finished their investigation finally and came knocking on her door 2 years later. Even though she had just gotten off work as a CNA, from my understanding, she was trained to do CPR and how to save a life, and she left him that night. She chose to leave my baby on the side of the road. After 6 years, I've cried over the thoughts that run through my head of all the unknowns. It was what happened that night. I don't know. I still don't know what happened that night. And it's been 6 years. Ugh. I'm sorry. I don't know if he was in pain. Was he crying for me? Was he trying to reach in his pocket to get his phone? What happened? I don't know. And I'll never know those answers. Imagine being a parent and your child just doesn't come home one night, and it's not something that I will ever be able to move forward from. I'm stuck here missing him and wanting him here. The regrets of buying the moped that month before, everything. She was given a plea deal without her knowledge. She was allowed to again hide from the truth of not having to face us in the court system in trial to hear the details of what happened. She was allowed to hide again. And I just can't, I don't know. This is my last chance of fighting for him, of being Caden's voice and just being who he needs me to be for him. And I just beg you to leave her where she is. 10 years is not long enough. And as it is right now, she's scheduled to be released the end of next year, and I think she should have to serve the whole sentence. I just can't. I can't think of. I just can't. That's it. Thank you for your time. For me.
Thank you, April. We really appreciate you being here this morning. It was really important to hear from you. So thank you so much for your statement. Heather, I know we have another one.
Thank you, April. We are going to promote you back to an attendee.
Okay.
And then I don't see on this attendees as a name, Kay, but if Kay could raise her hand on here so I know which one she is, we'll promote you so you can share your statement. Oh, are they all with you, April?
They're right here with me, my mom and my sister.
It's
Yeah.
okay, perfect. Thank you.
Am I supposed to be in this, Joe? Yeah.
Hi, Kay. Go ahead and share your statement when you're ready.
Okay, thank you for letting me speak today. We have fought for justice for Caden for 2 years before finally seeing the face that took Caden's life. People say you would never find that person, but Fayette County law enforcement never gave up until we got to see her face, and then she hid it in court behind a mask, and her hair was dyed. The 2 years this person went on with her life as if she was innocent, knowing different. Caden was the innocent child that lost his precious life. What remorse was there before she was locked up? What remorse is there now? Is it to get freedom after only less than 3 years in prison? This June 28th will be 6 years since she was the careless woman who took Caden's life, drove away leaving any of her problems behind. Never any remorse of coming forward to do the right thing. Caden was following the law. He had taken a moped driver's safety course at Kirkwood College. He had taken driver's ed and would have had his last day of driving before graduating, and the day after Kelli Jo Michael killed him. He was getting his driver's permit to be able to work and to go to school in the fall. He was where he was supposed to be on that road. He had a helmet and a big orange flag on the back of his moped to be protected. Caden had the confidence of other drivers seeing him and going around him, just like all the cars before Kelli Jo Michael. Caden was following the law. His cell phone was in his pocket when the police arrived on the scene, and his helmet had to be cut off his head because of the damage Kelli Jo Michael did. All the milestones that we didn't get to see him have, graduating, all that. But we live with this every day. He has never gotten to even step into the school for his first day of freshman year. Kelli Jo Michael only heard her life in her mind. She knew she hit Caden. She knew. She heard the sound and felt the impact. She knew, but drove away, leaving Caden alone on the road, alone with no help. Did she stop and take the moped off the front of her car where it had light that night? Only she knows. How can any person know what they did and drive away? That haunts me every day. There was TV news stories, newspaper reports. Caden's mom was on TV. April had posters up and billboards on the Justice for Caden all over Iowa with Caden's picture. His face would hopefully make this person who did this feel remorse and turn themselves in, but that day never happened. Justice for Caden was fought every day for 2 years. Every year that went by, our family fell apart. Caden's grandpa longed to see the face that took Caden. Doug gave up fighting for his own life after getting cancer in March of 2020. He said he wanted to be with Caden. What Kelli did and her choices affected our family. Anxiety, PTSD, all takes us back to what we saw on the Highway 150 that awful night. What we were left with, the scene of a vehicular homicide. A little boy, a little brother, didn't understand why the helicopter didn't take his brother to make him better. Sirens, lights, fire trucks, PTSD sets in every time, and we have no choice. Our family has a life sentence of the whys, and how could she? Why didn't she stop? What if she'd have stopped? What kind of a person would make the choices she did? Our lives are forever changed because of her actions. All the holidays of memories of Caden, we had no choice but to face each day without Caden for the rest of our lives. Please don't grant Kelli Jo Michael this parole at this time. Consider all the actions and the choices she made. None of them included helping Caden. The choices made were selfish and of her own good. Consider Caden's life that is gone at only 14. Consider the future Caden had that was taken away from him because of her selfish acts. It might seem a long time, having 6 years this month, but we live with what happened to Caden every day. I call Kelli Jo Michael a monster in the night. That's what it was. That is what she was. Hiding, trying to move away to New York. Where was the human in her then to face what she did? Where was it? I'm sorry when the judge asked her if she had anything to say. How many tears has she cried for Caden? Because we cry rivers. Is there remorse? Where's the human now? What makes her into a good human now? To be let back into society after less than 3 years of a 10-year sentence, killing a 14-year-old. She hid for 2 years, never coming forward the whole time while knowing what she did that night. Caden's life was precious. Please deny her parole at this time is less than 3 years behind bars, taking his life. True justice for Caden? For her actions on the night of June 28, 2018, for taking a life. I know prisons are crowded, but her plea deal was 10 years. She took a 14-year-old's life without a thought of the person he was. Not just any life, Caden's life. Has she ever said Caden's name? She doesn't know what she has done to all of us. And for us, it feels like it's just happened yesterday. It's never going to change. And please don't grant her parole at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay, for your statement. Appreciate it. It sounds like we have one more.
Yes. Carmen, go ahead and share your statement when you're ready.
My name's Carmen Wiedemeyer. I am Caden's aunt. I'm begging you to deny the parole of Kelly Michael. She hit and killed my 14-year-old nephew, Caden, while he was riding his moped on June 28, 2018. She didn't stop or try to help him. She chose to leave him laying there to die all alone in the dark. She lied and pretended it wasn't her for almost 2 years, insisting she hit a deer. She had almost 2 years to do the right thing and take responsibility for what she did, but chose not to. She broke every member of our family. Every single one of us have become different people because of what she did. Sorry. And she was only sentenced to up to 10 years in prison. We were sentenced to life without Caden, who had his whole life ahead of him. So many of my family, my daughter, my son, my mom, myself, are on anxiety and depression medicine to learn to survive in this new world we're forced to live in. Holidays and family get-togethers are just one more constant reminder of how broken our family is. Even to this day, almost 6 years later, when I'm driving at night, sometimes I can see Caden in front of me on his moped, and I can feel how scared he must have been. Caden had a huge heart and only wanted to help, only wanted to make people laugh and be happy. She stole him from us in one of the most painful ways possible. He spent the night at my house that night before, and I can't remember if I told him I loved him when he left. At trial, we didn't even get a sorry or a word from her. She's only sorry she got caught and only thought of herself. She's young and has her whole life in front of her once she's released. Caden's gone forever. Please keep her in prison where she belongs for as long as possible. Not only for our family, but for Caden, because his life mattered. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen, for your statement. We really appreciate your sharing this morning. Thank you. Heather,
Yeah, we're gonna promote you back, April, to panelist, okay? I can find it.
all right. So Kelly, now it's your turn. Why don't you talk to us about what you heard and your responses to the victim statements?
Well, I would first like to start by saying I'm sorry. I apologize for what I took away from you forever. I can never give it back. I hurt you in a way that is, it's just incomprehensible. Like, no matter how many times I say it, I won't be able to give you back what I took. And I feel that pain every day, and I regret it every single day. And I truly do apologize for everything, for not giving you the justice and the peace and the closure that you deserved. There's not a day goes by that I don't think about it.
Well, thank you, Kelly. So let's move on to some of the other questions that we have for you, okay? So it sounds like that day it was more of a distracted driving situation. Is that correct? No alcohol, no drugs, nothing like that involved in the situation?
No, I was I don't want to say simply, but I was looking down at my phone. I was sending out a text message to my boss.
And so so talk about your own mental health journey that you've dealt with since you've been incarcerated.
Well, since I've been here, I've been in therapy for about 2.5 years now with Dr. Zinzer. And she has just really helped me recognize some of my faults, some of my demons, so to speak. And I don't think I would have gotten that therapy had I not been sentenced to prison. So I'm thankful for that. Dr. Zinzer has been a blessing in my life and just has really helped me grow as a person.
Okay. And so what are your plans if we were to move forward and release you today? What are your plans regarding mental health and ongoing therapy? You have a plan in that space?
Dr. Zinzer said once I were to get a release date or just parole in general, she would help me get a therapy appointment set up right away. I can also go to like Evelyn K. Davis or Broadlawn where they have therapists available.
And then my last question before I turn it over, are you using medications? And if so, what are your plans for that moving forward?
Yes, I'm currently on fluoxetine, which is the generic version of Prozac. It's for anxiety, mild depression, and I do plan to continue that if I'm released.
Thank you so much for answering my questions. I'm going to see if our panelists have other questions for you. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Susie. Susie, did you have questions?
I do, thank you. Good morning, Kelly, how are you?
Okay, how are you?
Good, thank you. I'd like to know what your thoughts are about a transition after you would leave the Beacon of Light.
I just kind of want to transition back into society and, get my own place. I want to take the real estate course and eventually the exam and get my realtor's license. I want to be a productive member of society again, and I want to show that I have changed and that I can move forward and live a positive, healthy life.
Looks like you've been a unit mentor, is that correct?
Yeah, I was.
Can you describe that to us and tell us a little bit about it?
So a unit mentor was someone that just was everybody's go-to when they had questions, when they needed some peer support. If I couldn't answer them, I would direct them to where they needed to go. I was like the go-to person for COs and for counselors. Just basically a huge part of it was like peer support, just being there for my peers and helping them with anything that they would need to the extent of my ability.
What did you like most about that?
I just like being able to help people. I know considering what I'm in here for doesn't show that, but I genuinely like helping people and helping people be the best people that they can be.
Thank you. So becoming a realtor is your future goal. What's your short-term goal regarding a job?
I have a job lined up through a friend of mine at Applebee's. So it's just a serving position, but it's a good stepping stone.
All right, thank you. Can you talk to us about supports that you may have in the community?
I have a couple of close friends in the Des Moines area, and then my family has been very supportive through this entire process. They are probably my biggest support. Visits, emotional support, financial support. My mom and stepdad have gotten pretty much everything I would need lined up for me if a release was granted. So I'm just incredibly grateful and thankful for that.
I want to touch a bit on your alcohol use. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, so I would say prior to everything, I was just, a normal, I don't want to say casual drinker, but I was 24 years old. So I was hanging out with my friends, drinking, a social drinker, so to speak. And then after the crash, I relied on alcohol as a coping mechanism. And I'm ashamed that I did that instead of just coming forward and doing the right thing. It was easier to live in that state of denial when I was drunk than it was to come forward.
Would you consider yourself an alcoholic?
I guess yes, functioning or not, they say if you go to work, you're functioning. But I've definitely learned to not rely on alcohol. And I've been sober now for almost 4 years.
What would a relapse plan look like for you?
I guess I would just go seek out AA if necessary. I haven't thought a whole lot about that because I don't intend to use alcohol as a coping mechanism. I've learned much healthier ways to deal with things in here.
Have you participated in AA or anything like that while you've been incarcerated?
We don't currently have AA here.
Thank you for clarifying that for us. I think that's all my questions. Thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you, Susie. Jesse, did you have questions?
I do, thank you. Hello, my name is Jesse Rinka. Nice to meet you, Miss Michael. My question for you is on the night of the incident, you stated that you thought that you hit a deer, correct?
Yes.
So being with that said, on the impact, why didn't you pull over to assess your damage and to see what you did hit? Because it had to be pretty impactful in the sound and the damage and everything. What made you not stop?
So, like I said, I initially thought that I'd hit a deer and my car was still functioning. So I guess I kept driving. And then at some point, about 2 miles or so down the road, I pulled off to look at my car. I had called a friend and was like, I think I just hit a deer. I don't know if I'm going to be able to drive home. After assessing everything, realized that my car was still functioning and that I could get home. I was also really nervous because even though I thought I hit a deer, I wasn't really sure what I had hit. And then, like I said, 2 days later, I had seen on the news the story of Caden Essling, and I was like, oh my God, was that me? Like, did I do that? And I kind of pieced it together from there. And I was just so afraid, and just I didn't know how to come forward. I was afraid of the consequences. I was afraid of what my family would think. I was afraid of going to prison. I was afraid of costs, which sounds silly because I didn't have insurance. I was so afraid, and fear is a huge motivator to make you do things and make choices that you wouldn't typically make. And at that point, I just kind of moved forward every day because it was easier to live in denial than it was to face the reality.
So at the time, the benefit for you would have been, hopefully this just goes away by itself, but the cost is that it's cost you time in prison, correct?
Essentially, yes.
Okay.
I kind of figured that at some point I would get caught. I just didn't know when.
So if you had to pinpoint what's your biggest regret right now, what would it be?
Not stopping or just pulling out my phone in general. You don't realize what looking down for even just a few seconds can really do.
What were your thoughts what the victims said, the 3 victims that spoke today, which was April, Kay, and Carmen? What do you think about what was said by those 3? What are your thoughts?
I think that their reactions and their feelings are completely right. They lost something that can never be given back to them. And the reason they lost it is because of me. So for them to feel like I don't deserve to be released, or that I, need to spend a full 10 years in here, those are completely valid. I can't say anything more than just that I'm sorry. And I genuinely do apologize for everything.
So if you are denied today, what will be your next step?
I would just keep doing what I'm currently doing. I have a job here. I go to therapy every other week. Yeah, life in here is kind of about routine, and it's just about moving forward.
I appreciate you answering all my questions. I have no more questions for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Susie, did you have any follow-up questions?
I do not, thank you.
So Kelly, now's the time that it's your turn. Is there anything you'd like to tell us, or maybe something you've prepared for us to hear before we make our decision today?
I would just like to say that my time here has benefited me quite a bit. I have taken every class possible, active, steps, Circa, which Circa has been great support. I have a case manager through them that I'll have support with for a year after potential release. Steps has taught me to take a break and think before I speak, and that I can't always control my environment, but I can control my reaction to it. Active has taught me to really listen to other people when they're speaking, to understand what they're saying, not just to respond to them. And also doing a mental matrix in my head will let me know what my away moves are and what my toward moves are. And I couldn't be more thankful or grateful for the opportunities that I have had here at ICIW.
Right. Is there anything else?
Just a final apology that I really am sorry. Like, I took from them something I can never give back, and it haunts me every day. If I could go back in time, I wouldn't even pick up my phone. And I just really am sorry for that. I want to be able to move forward with everything and advocate for, texting and driving, and just tell people it's not okay.
Okay. So now you're going to sit back, Kelly, and just listen, and we're going to talk about what we're going to do today. Colleagues, who would like to go first?
I will. I think that this went from a poor judgment to worse in an accident, even though Miss Michael has programmed well and sounds like she grabbed the gist of active and has explained what her benefits are from that. The part that I have a hard time with was leaving the scene and then a 2-year lapse. I hope she continues to keep her mindset the way she is and seeking the help she needs and with the psychologist and what have you. But I'm going to be against the DOC recommendation of release at this time. So I'm going to deny release.
All right, Susie?
Yeah, this is, what happened was horrible, and I appreciate hearing from Caden's mom and aunt and grandma today. I'm looking at the transition program. What I'm looking at. She's going to TDD in December of 25. She served 65% of the adjusted sentence. She's been involved with minimum workouts. She's a low risk according to the assessments done by the DOC. And I'm looking at someone who has engaged. It looks like DOC has placed trust in her with the jobs that they've entrusted to her. And I'm looking at all that she's engaged in. She's engaged in several items, including the active. She's got some certifications, so she's skilled up. And the transition space is one that's not just a couple weeks, not just a couple months. It looks like it'd be 6 to 12 months looking at Beacon of Life, and it looks like there's a good plan here, and she has supports and she has a plan. She's been involved in her mental health therapy, and I appreciate that she came forward and said that she is, an alcoholic. I believe that I could probably support this unless there's other extenuating factors that Renee, you include in your conversation. If I do support this, it's a PGD 310C to Beacon of Life in Des Moines. I'd be mental health, medication compliance. I'd be substance abuse in that as well. And then also the 50A. And I would include a 20B here based on the fact of what Jesse was talking about. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Susie. My thoughts process was in the line with Susie. This is a terrible situation, and we heard clearly from April and Kay and Carmen that we're never going to have this young man back. But we are looking at time being complete, and some supervision at a lower level is a good idea. In a lot of cases, she's done all the treatment and the planning that we've requested of her inside. She's done all of the programming that's available to her, and more additional programming would be available to her if she were to step down a Beacon of Life. And I agree that that's a really good transition plan. So I would actually be in agreement with Susie with the same coding. So I'm going to come back to Jesse, and Jesse, you're fine to stay at your location, or would you like to change based on hearing other people's discussion?
I just want to ask you, so there is no more programming is what you're seeing that could be offered to this person, correct?
That's what I'm seeing. That's correct.
Okay. With that being said, for the transition purposes only and with the time left, I'll go along with what you guys are saying with the same codes as 20B added to it.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Dates too.
Thank you, Jesse. All right, so I will deliver a decision. All right, Kelly, you heard we had a tough conversation today about all of this, because the board, this is a really hard one, because not only have we taken a life, but also, there was that whole period of running away and not taking accountability. But your time is coming to an end and stepping down into a lower level of supervision. You'll still be under the supervision of the court. So the codes we talked about today is you're not going to be discharged early. You will fulfill your entire time as determined by the courts. So you'll be on supervision through December of 25. And we're asking that you be paroled to the Beacon of Life where you'll complete your program there. And then we will have, well, we're going to give you treatment codes in the 40A. What we're asking for you to do is a mental health evaluation or continuation of your mental health treatment as necessary, according to your officer. And then we're going to ask you to be med compliant, meaning that if you go to change your mental health meds, that's okay, but do that under with the use of a doctor, not just on your own. And then also to continue in the substance use work. Maybe consider things like AA, NA, things like that are available maybe to you on the outside that you don't have available inside. And then finally, you're going to have a 50A. That is a no alcohol use code. We're going to ask you not to be drinking alcohol and also not to be hanging out in places where it's primarily served, being liquor stores, bars. You can go to restaurants where it's served, but those primary sale locations you cannot be. Do you understand what we're asking of you today?
I do.
Okay. You'll go out and do well. We appreciate seeing you this morning and good luck to you. That concludes our interview. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can't make it up. This parole board has no soul. We have seen many hearings, and I'm only starting to roll them out to you, but this is something that has been consistent. You might recall a hearing where they denied the man because he was stalking those who were voted into their roles in political areas, and they were very upset about that. They felt threatened about that, and they denied that man. But in this case, where a woman takes a life, runs away for 2 years, she was only just caught on June 26th of 2020. She has a 10-year sentence. She shows zero remorse. That tissue box sitting in front of her, did you notice that it was not once engaged by her? She's there pretending to cry. Nonetheless, she starts off when they say, "What was it that you did to get locked up?" She says, "I was driving and I killed a teenager on a moped." A teenager. She doesn't mention his name. He has a name. She has no soul. She's a witch. Not only that, but she lied through her entire parole hearing. Richard found information that apparently the board can't take the time to research. She was just a normal a normal girl who was just whatever driving and she looked down at her phone. Well, it only takes a second to pull up her record to see that she had a record. Operating under the influence in 2015, 3 years before this offense. She has another offense. Operating without registration card in 2016. And mind you, she again didn't have insurance for this car. And then she gets arrested again. September 11th, 2018. Mind you, this is just 3 months after she killed the teenager on a moped. A speeding, but she was arrested for it. This isn't just a speeding ticket, it's getting arrested. Then she has 10/9/2019 damage done by animal. Count 2 dogs at large. I guess she, like owner, like dog, You know, pets are like their owners. Something that she got in trouble for that. That's arrested. These aren't like, just little tickets. These are getting cuffed. Before she was caught for the homicide, she had been in handcuffs at least 4 times. She lied through the entire interview. Finally arrested on 6/25. How does the board let her get away with lie after lie after lie, taking no accountability? She actually uses the words, I don't really I guess I'm an alcoholic. I haven't really thought about my recovery plan. You know, um, I, but if I did need help, I would seek it out if necessary. But I haven't thought about it a whole lot. You're in prison. Do you believe for 1 second that she wasn't drinking? That she was simply just texting? She was so afraid she thought she hit a deer. And they reward her with parole. And Jesse was going to deny. And if you're curious about the man in the middle, why he didn't vote, it's because at this time he was still on training. So it's just a 3-panel board, and Jesse was and they don't take the victim into account in making their decisions at all. It wasn't in something that even crossed their mind. Instead, it's, well, there's no more programs that she can do. And they make up to make it better. It's like you're still under the jurisdiction of the DOC. It's just that you're going to a different level. Pathetic. Take into account that she ran away for 2 years. June 28, 2018 is when she killed him. When she killed Caden, the boy. Not even the boy, she called him a teenager on a moped. She says, I was just an average 24-year-old. I was running late for my second job, and I was texting, and I killed a teenager. And by the way, and I'll read to you the report, they didn't say, when they caught her, she wasn't, according to the report, driving to a second job. She was driving home. So another lie. But this is what it is, and thank you again, Richard. Now, Richard transcribed it for me, so I'm going to read it to you. A former Cedar Falls woman remains silent. She remained silent as she was sentenced to a prison for hitting Caden on a moped, leaving him to die. Authority alleged Michelle was texting while driving a Pontiac Torrent on Iowa Highway 150 South on June 28, 2018, when she struck a 14-year-old Caden of Maynard. In her written plea, she admitted that she was driving in a reckless manner that led to Caden Eastling's unintentional death. Now, this is the plea deal they let her have. Eastling's mother, April, said the fatal crash had dire and widespread effects on everyone who knew him. She said other family members continued to suffer, and his circling of friends disbanded following his death. An accident is an accident, but what happens after an accident is what determines a person's character. Anyone in their right mind would have stopped and at least looked at their vehicle if they had hit something. And if you hit a moped, you know that there was a person on that moped, and you should know to call 911 to get a person to help. This is mom. Family members noted that Michelle was a certified nursing assistant who likely would have known CPR and had a phone to call for help. How could someone do this and drive off to hide and leave Kaden alone, said the grandmother. And we heard from the victims and we felt it. The pain is so raw. The pain is so intense. And the parole board they don't have a victim's advocate. It's like, where is Mr. Roche? Where is Mrs. Stapleton? Watching the Iowa parole board, I discussed this with Richard, it puts things into perspective that I just didn't have. I didn't have that perspective. But Iowa is it's Louisiana is actually at the top of the totem pole in trying to get it right and putting in the effort. Then it's interesting. It's interesting to put this into, but in Connecticut, they would have held her responsible. I do believe that they would have. And Illinois for sure. Illinois is from what we have seen so far is tough on crime. And Utah, I don't have any faith in Utah, but Iowa definitely still takes the cake for being, just from what we've seen so far, a joke. So how they caught him. It's interesting, but someone who knew her tipped off the police like 2 years later, because this was a cold case. They really had no idea. But the investigators and the sheriff's office received a tip that they should look into healthcare workers in the area. So after receiving that tip, they realized that the crash came about 10 minutes after the shift change at the nearby care center. And that's when, so they looked at everyone, and that's when they saw that she would be heading back home, not to work, back home. And they said, that then at that point, the DA went ahead to prosecute the case. Detectives learned that she had told acquaintances that she had hit a deer, and that she had been found using another vehicle since the collision and had been making arrangements to have the torrent repaired, he said. Authorities found the torrent parked in a lot nearby her apartment. It still had front end damage, and a missing section of the grill matched as a part recovered in the crash scene. So that was how they caught her. And again, to emphasize the idea that she made a claim today at her parole hearing that it wasn't that much of a damage. She wasn't sure. She thought maybe she hit a deer. She just kept going. She never drove that car again. It was parked in a lot, just sitting there. It's like we see this so often. Vehicular homicide, sadly, it happens a lot. But what's strange, I can still never quite wrap my mind around it, is that we see that it seems so often to be these monsters, these just narcissistic. She can't even shed a real tear. She has to fake it because she can't cry. She doesn't feel bad. She can't feel empathy. How is it that we so often see these people who are the ones that commit these crimes? But yet the parole board can't see any of it. Nor can they empathize with the victim's pain and what this does to the victims all over again. To feel victimized all over again. Now, this is why we do this, because I don't think this just doesn't happen in a vacuum. The world can now see how the parole board treated the mother, the grandmother of their precious little boy. To hear the words that the mother had to say broke my heart.
Nightmare that you just can't wake up from.